shattered bonds, unbroken spirit. My fight to end a family's trafficking legacy at 16. The air in our kitchen smelled of burnt toast and betrayal the morning grandmother Veta pulled out her tape measure. I was 16, crunching on Lucky Charms, when she wrapped the cold, stiff tape around my hips, her fingers brushing my skin like a spider's legs. 34 inches, she declared, scribbling in her leather notebook as if cataloging livestock. Perfect breeding proportions. My spoon froze mid-bite, milk dripping onto the table. I glanced at Mom, expecting outrage, but she just stared into her coffee, her eyes hollow as if she'd already surrendered. "What's happening?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. No one answered. The silence was heavier than the cereal bowl in my hands. For 3 months, strange men had been slinking into our house, their eyes crawling over me like I was a prize horse at auction. Grandmother called them business associates, but their stares left a greasy film on my skin. They'd sip tea in her parlor, their voices low and clipped, while she paraded me around in dresses I didn't choose. I was Esperanza Morales Essie. To everyone but the documents that would unravel my world, the truth hit like a punch to the gut when I found the filing cabinet. I'd been searching for my birth certificate in grandmother's study, a room that always smelled of lavender and lies. The cabinet's lock was broken, and inside were folders labeled with girls' names, ages, and what looked like invoices. My hands trembled as I pulled out the one marked Esperanza, age 16. Inside were medical records I'd never consented to, confirmation of my virginity, fertility assessments, dental x-rays, photos of me at school, at the park, unaware of the camera, and worst of all, a contract between grandmother and a man named Dmitry Klov for $45,000. My delivery date was March 15th, next week. I gagged, the room spinning as I realized I wasn't just being married off. I was being sold. There were 17 other girls' files. Some names I knew from school: Maria, Sophia, Carmen. Others were strangers with notes like "delivered to declant" or "payment complete." One file stopped my heart. Luna, age 14, her photo stamped with a red deceased. My stomach lurched, and I barely made it to the bathroom before vomiting. This wasn't just about me. Grandmother was running a human trafficking ring. That night, I faked food poisoning, locked myself in my room, and photographed every document with my phone, the flash casting eerie shadows on the walls. The next morning, over pancakes, grandmother announced my wedding to the family. "Essie's moving to Eastern Europe next week," she said, her voice as casual as if she were discussing the weather. "She's marrying a successful businessman who'll provide for her." My father's fork clattered against his plate. "Since when?" he asked, confusion creasing his face. "Since it was decided," grandmother snapped, her eyes like daggers. I excused myself, heart pounding, and called my cousin Ricardo, a criminal justice major. I sent him the photos. His text came back instantly. "Holy shit, Essie. This is human trafficking. Call the FBI now." But I couldn't. Not yet. That afternoon, I overheard grandmother on the phone, coordinating the movement of other girls that week. This was bigger than me, and I needed more proof. For 3 days, I turned spy in my own home. I hid a recorder under the parlor table, capturing grandmother's deals in her cold, clipped tone. I snapped photos of visitors' license plates through the blinds, my hands shaking so badly I could barely focus the camera. I documented every detail: bank transfers, coded emails, names of buyers. The breaking point came when I heard her plan to drug me. "She's asking too many questions," she told someone on the phone, her voice low and venomous. "Put the sedative in her orange juice. She'll sleep until Prague." I was cargo, not a bride. That night, I compiled a digital evidence package: photos, recordings, financial records, and uploaded it to a secure cloud drive. I drafted emails to the FBI, local police, and every major news outlet I could think of. But I had one last move: a tea. My farewell breakfast. The dining room smelled of syrup and dread. Mom's eyes were red from crying. Dad looked lost, his hands fidgeting with his napkin. My little brother Diego, only 12, kept asking why I had to leave. Grandmother raised her orange juice in a toast to new beginnings. I stood, my legs trembling but my voice steady. Before we toast, I said, pulling out my phone, I have something to share. I hit play on a recording of grandmother negotiating my sale price 45. Low for the Morales girl. The room froze. Dad's whisper cut through the silence. You sick bitch. Grandmother lunged for my phone, but I was faster. Too late, I said, hitting send on 18 emails. The FBI's on their way. Her face twisted into a snarl. You stupid girl, she hissed. You have no idea how deep this goes. Your precious family's on the list. Your mother agreed. Your father signed the papers. I turned to my parents, my voice cracking. What's she talking about? Mom's hands shook around her coffee mug. We owed money, she whispered. Your father's gambling debts. They said this was the only way. Dad stood, knocking over his chair. Veda said it was just a marriage. He shouted, a rich husband, a good life. Grandmother's laugh was a blade. You think these men want wives? They buy slaves. Half these girls are dead within a year. The front door exploded open. FBI. Everyone on the ground. Agents in tactical gear flooded the room, weapons drawn. Grandmother stuffed papers in her mouth, chewing frantically. Mom collapsed, sobbing on the linoleum. Dad was cuffed, his face a mask of shock. Agent Patricia Torres found me behind an overturned chair, clutching my phone. Esperanza Morales? She asked, her voice a lifeline in the chaos. I nodded. You're safe now, honey. Your evidence was incredible. We've been tracking this network for 8 months, but you gave us the key. In a sterile FBI conference room, I learned the scope of grandmother's operation. Her blessed union's cultural marriage services was a front for a trafficking ring spanning 3 continents. For 15 years, she targeted Latino families in financial distress, using church connections to build trust, then convincing parents to marry off their daughters for debt forgiveness. The girls vanished. Luna, the 14-year-old I thought was dead, had died escaping a Moldovan brothel. 17 others were unaccounted for, their families receiving fake letters about their happy married lives. The financial records I'd photographed showed $1.2 million in transactions, with girls sold for $25,000 to $65,000 based on age and physical traits. Surveillance photos showed grandmother meeting men in suits, exchanging briefcases, boarding private jets with terrified girls. Your evidence exposed the whole iceberg, Agent Torres said. My parents' interrogations revealed more horrors. Dad's gambling addiction had racked up $47,000 in debt. Grandmother offered to clear it by selling me, spinning tales of European princes. Mom admitted she suspected something was wrong when Rosa Ramirez, 15, vanished after her wedding in Romania. The letters Rosa's family received didn't sound like her, but grandmother had excuses: cultural adjustment, new language, busy lifestyle. Rosa was killed escaping a Bucharest compound. The raids came 3 days later, hitting 12 locations across 4 states. They arrested grandmother fleeing to Mexico with suitcases of cash and fake IDs. Dmitry Klov, actually Viktor Petrov, an Interpol most wanted trafficker, was caught in a Phoenix hotel with plans to ship 4 girls overseas. A Tucson warehouse, disguised as a shipping business, held 4 girls: Carmen, 17, emaciated and drugged; Sophia, 15, days from being shipped to Ukraine; Isabella, 16, still fighting; and Arya, 14, believing she'd been adopted for a better life. All were rescued. The media called it the largest trafficking bust in state history. CNN interviewed me from an FBI safe house. Why document everything instead of running? Anderson Cooper asked. Luna, I whispered. She was 14 when they killed her. I couldn't let more girls become her. My family disintegrated. Dad got 18 months in prison after a plea deal. Mom avoided jail with probation and community service but spiraled into agoraphobia and alcoholism. Diego moved to Denver with Aunt Carmen, carrying the shame of our family's actions. Why'd you tell? He asked once, his voice small. Now everyone knows what we did. Grandmother's trial was a media circus. She showed no remorse, claiming she gave girls better lives. The judge sentenced her to life without parole plus 300 years, calling her a dangerous predator. I testified, staring into her hate-filled eyes, seeing fear there for the first time. 6 months after the trial, I testified before Congress. The Esperanza Act passed unanimously, mandating background checks for marriage brokers, harsher penalties for family trafficking, and funding for survivor services. It was signed into law on Luna's 18th birthday. The Phoenix sisters Carmen, Sophia, Isabella, Arya, and I meet monthly. Carmen's studying nutrition to help trauma survivors. Sophia's pursuing international law. Isabella teaches self-defense to at-risk girls. Arya, still healing, struggles with trust but is alive. We're survivors, bound by shared fire. Then came the call that changed everything. Agent Torres found grandmother's real records in a safety deposit box, detailed notes on every girl trafficked over 20 years. Luna, marked deceased, was alive in Bulgaria, forced into prostitution but rescued after a raid triggered by my evidence. On a video call, her scarred arms and shaved head couldn't dim the fire in her eyes. "You saved my life," she said. 2 others, Maria and Yuki, were also freed. 12 families backed out of trafficking deals after my story broke. I'm 19 now, at Georgetown on a full scholarship, studying international law and psychology to fight trafficking globally. My dorm walls are covered with photos of the Phoenix sisters, reminders of why I fought. Letters from escaped girls, Texas, California, Florida show my case saved them. Dr. Patricia Morrison wrote that the Esperanza Protocol, inspired by my evidence, is now standard in trafficking investigations. Even Viktor Petrov, the man who was to buy me, wrote from prison. "You destroyed a monster," he said, sharing details that led to more arrests. Grandmother died in her cell, her last words accusing me of destroying our family. But Diego's thriving. The Phoenix sisters are rebuilding. 50 potential victims were spared. The laws are changing.